Bachman's Basement is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show.
Welcome back to Bachman's Basement, where we dig through the darker corners of Stephen King's work, especially the strange nightmares hiding in his early short fiction. Tonight's story is Trucks, first published in 1973 and later collected in the Night Shift anthology. Like many stories from that collection, the premise is deceptively simple. Machines stop obeying people, but what makes Trucks unsettling isn't explosive violence or giant robot battles. It's something quieter and far more disturbing. The machines don't rise up out of hatred. They simply begin using us. I'm your host, Chris Patton, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Chris Clawson. Chris, how have you been? What have you been up to? What have you been watching, listening to, or playing?
I'm doing good. It's another week, and business as usual, I suppose. Haven't watched too much new stuff this last week, but I did start playing with yourself, playing Marathon, and that game is a blast. And then I played it a little bit by myself as well, and I'm starting to get better at like the strategy of that game, where it's all about moving really slow and listening. It's it's a game that just takes some doing and realizing that it's not a shooter like all the others. You have to be very cautious and treat it almost like you're there. Like you don't want to get shot. So what do? You be very cautious and clear your corners. So it's been a lot of fun with that. I don't know how you feel about the game, but I've definitely been enjoying it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed my time with it so far. I've really only played with you and your son, which has been a lot of a blast in itself. Jumping in for a few hours and playing with you guys. It is very risk reward, deciding what you want to go after, when you want to extract with what gear you have, if it's worth trying to take down other players, and or is it worth collecting that for the loot and selling it and then buying things as upgrades as you go along. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like you said, very much patience, listening, playing to your strengths with the weapons that you have. That goes a long way as well, because you're generally going to get outshot depending on how many people you're facing and where you're at. It's a lot of corridor shooting as well. So
absolutely tight corridors, and also learning to use the kit of the shell that you're using as well. So the character, or what they call them, shells. But that is what I've learned, at least when you go in solo. I've found that the best character for solo, for me anyway, has been Assassin, just because you can go invisible and throw out smoke, and sort of just, it gives you a way out if it gets too heated. So
yeah, I haven't tried anything solo on that game, but that would be what I would think, just because when you're extracting, even just as your normal AI enemies, having that invisibility and some shield or smoke grenade seems to go a long way as far as getting out of there from the videos and stuff I've watched. That might be something I tap into a little bit tomorrow while you're at work, before you eventually hop on, and I'm assuming we'll probably end up playing some more at some point. But yeah, sure. I might tap into some solo play on that game. Yeah,
just
I don't know.
Except that you will die. I died a bunch yesterday evening when I played it a little bit. Probably died like 5 times in a row, and then I tried just moving really slow, and I actually exfilled, and then I played one game this morning before I went to work, and I killed somebody, and I got a bunch of good loot, and I completed my objective, and I exfilled, and I felt really good about myself.
Yeah, the biggest thing that well, this is most games. There's a lot of inventory management in loot games, and I think once I kind of got over that learning curve of just like
Yeah, what is important and
what's
quickly being able to.
important and quick. Yeah, exactly. Getting like, okay, well, I know I need shield charges, and I know I need healing, so
Right. And then all the other stuff, it's like you start to learn, okay, what are these things I'm looking at? It just looks like nonsense at first. And I think that's a lot of people's biggest complaint about the game is that all the icons kind of look the same at a glance. But if you're playing and you're paying attention, you start to, your brain just sort of adapts to the look of it.
Yeah, and I mean, part of that is you're also picking up things that have no relation at all to the battle portion of that game. It's just sellable loot, you know.
Yeah.
So you have to weigh.
Right.
Man, this is a gold
But-
tablet. Should I try to get this out, or should I drop this and pick up an additional gun or some additional ammo?
Right.
Is my backpack's getting full?
Exactly. Yeah. So you definitely, you know, if you take down a player, especially in solos, it seems like there's some good stuff. I can tell you that. Like at this point, the game's been out long enough that people are going in with good stuff. So I killed one person and looted their bag, and I got a bunch of purple stuff. So I was pretty happy.
Yeah, some of those little mini raid events or horde events that they have seem to turn out some pretty good loot as well. But that would be really hard to do solo. Some of those are a bit ridiculous. We had some pretty funny stories playing online where we would queue one of those on accident, and then I'd be like, "Oh no, I'm stuck in a room with a bunch of lasers." Great.
I actually, on that run I did this morning, I actually used one of those. I queued one of those on purpose and then dipped out and let the person I ended up killing they knew I was there, but they didn't know where I was. And then I queued it, and then I just kind of quietly moved my way out of the robot's path. And then I just kind of waited until I stopped hearing shooting, and then I quietly moved back in and found them. And they were looting a box, and then I just shot them, and it's like, yeah, came up and stabbed them, and it's all good.
Yeah, and for those out there listening who haven't played it, it is a Bungie game, so it very much shoots like a Halo or a Destiny. More so, I would say more so Destiny control and feel wise than the older Halos, but has that kind of time to kill, and a lot of the weaponry seems to be in the same realm of Destiny. A lot of your abilities through the different shells are modified versions of things that exist in Destiny, so they're not as OP like your
right
in things. But if you are a fan of Destiny, it's probably worth just jumping in and checking out for sure.
Yeah, the only barrier to entry is that it is not a free-to-play game, so it's $40, which, you know, is cheaper than a lot of games out there today. So, you know, you just got to know that it's a difficult game, and that its pacing is not Call of Duty or, you know, Apex or something like that. It's very much like you have to slow it down, and you have to manage your resources responsibly. Otherwise, you will just die. So, and the art style, I'd say, is unique in a way that, like, I've never seen a game that looks exactly like this one. So,
yeah, for sure. Definitely has a unique art style. The other thing I would say for people who are thinking about buying it or playing it is it is something that is more fun to play with other people.
absolutely.
And if you're someone who doesn't like playing with other people, this is probably not the game for you. Because as Chris was describing, the solo mode is going to be, playing it solo is going to be very, very hard.
It's punishing.
But if you're playing with a group of people, you're doing call outs, even if you were just jumping in with a random group online or something, it can be very, very satisfying when you get your call outs right and you take down a team. It feels really good. So,
right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's really been the highlight of my entertainment this last week. So, not too much else to report. Yeah, that's about it. So, how about yourself?
I played, obviously we played Marathon. That was great. I've really enjoyed that. Also played some old games. I played Bully, still playing through that. Rockstar took a break from that and loaded up Def Jam Fight for New York. which is, for those who don't know, it is a Aki wrestling game made for Def Jam Studios. Circa, let's see, what, 2003, 2004. And it has a lot of Def Jam artists. It has Henry Rollins in it. It is a straight wrestling fighting game with kind of a backstory and voice dialogue and picking your girlfriend, such as my girlfriend currently in the game is Lil Kim.
Nice.
For instance. So it's just kind of crazy because it's one of those games that would like never get made today. There's just like too much, like getting the rights to all the music and getting a bunch of stars together to agree to be in this fighting game. Even with slightly changed names would just be ridiculous. Like it has a shop that's like Jacob the Jewelers, for instance, like legit things in it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was a fun go back and play one of these games. So I played through about, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours of it. Yeah, it's a pretty short game. There's tons of unlockables. I think there's like, I want to say there's like 50 characters in all in that game, if I remember correctly. Though DMX is not in the version I'm playing, which is sad. Sad. He was in the game before that, Vendetta. But if you like a good old school, like WCW Revenge or WCW versus NW or WCW World Tour or WCW NWO Revenge or WrestleMania 2000, it is a similar grappling and fighting style with some environmental things that you can do. That's pretty neat. Plus, you get an awesome soundtrack. And, yeah. So that, and then as far as something I watched, I went back and watched a B movie. I hadn't done one of those. Actually 2, because I watched Maximum Overdrive, which we'll get into a little bit later as we go into our story here today. But I watched Alligator, the 1980 monster movie, Jaws-esque movie. Have you ever seen Alligator, Chris?
I have not, although it just makes me think of that movie Lake Placid. Doesn't that have a giant alligator in it?
It does. It does. This came out in 1980. It's basically the story. A kid goes with her family to Florida, tourist trap. She buys a alligator, takes it back home to her city. Her dad flips out, flushes it down the toilet. It survives in the sewer underneath a chemical plant where they're testing on dogs and other animals, and it's eating these animals, and it also becomes whatever they're testing on these animals, but makes it more of a monster. And
so it's like a mutant alligator.
Yes, it is one of the better one of these kind of movies.
That sounds interesting. I actually would check that out. What is it streaming on, or is it?
Shout out to our boys at the Internet Archive. I watched one on the Internet Archive. I believe it is also on Tubi.
Okay.
But yeah, it should be pretty easy to find. It had a budget of $1.5 million and made $6 million in the box office, and is considered kind of like a holy grail of B movies. It's one of those. So if you've never checked it out, it's worth a watch. It is definitely not quality level of Jaws, but if you've ever seen the movie Piranhas,
yes,
and want something of that nature, Alligator, you could do a lot worse than Alligator.
Good to know. I am definitely going to check it. I love that kind of, popcorn B horror sort of stuff. So definitely going to check it out.
All right. So you ready to get into trucks?
Yes.
I'm trying to make sure I enunciate my T as well as possible. All right, we'll start with the synopsis. The story takes place almost entirely at a roadside diner alongside a quiet stretch of highway. The narrator is a salesman named Ray. He's eating breakfast, and when something strange begins to happen outside, the trucks in the parking lot all start moving. At first, it looks accidental. Maybe someone forgot the parking brake, maybe a gear slipped, but the movement doesn't stop. Soon, the trucks begin circling the diner like predators. Tanker trucks, big rigs, delivery trucks. More and more arrive until the lot is completely surrounded, and it becomes clear to everyone inside that no one is driving them. The people inside the diner are trapped. Whenever someone attempts to escape, the trucks react violently, charging towards or blocking exits. The message becomes clear very quickly that the trucks are in control of this situation, not the humans.
Yeah. It's an interesting. I mean, Stephen King obviously has done the vehicle comes to life thing, with a story that we haven't actually covered yet, but Christine, I think most people are familiar with the premise there, and this is obviously a different take on it. But I find it fascinating, when you take something mundane like a vehicle, and then you imagine, you look at it, you look at the headlights of cars, and you think, and I've heard King say this before. He's like, when I was a kid, I just, my imagination ran wild, and I'd see cars and I'd think, those look like eyes, and that grill looks like a mouth, and he just obviously was fascinated, with vehicles and the idea that what if they had a life of their own?
Yeah, and this one has a little bit of a twist to it in comparison to Christine or the short story that we talked about from the same collection of short stories last week, which was The Mangler, in which the trucks do not seem to have a demonic possession. It's almost more that they've become sentient,
Right.
or that they have been taken over by an alien species or something. It is very different than like Christine or The Mangler.
Yeah, I'm sure that you'll talk about it as we go along here. I haven't completely finished the script here and reading. I'm following along kind of with you. But just the idea that they know how to communicate with us as long as we understand how, uh, I guess, what is just the sound of ticking, Morse code. There we go. So yeah, that premise in the story was interesting, where it's like they have a plan, and their plan is relatively foolproof. So
Yeah, they're the plan. It's just the trucks are slowly enslaving humanity to some extent. So eventually, the survivors they start to realize that they're not about to be killed. That these trucks are not trying to kill them. They're actually trying to put them to work, herd them up like cattle. So the trucks they begin honking their horns in patterns that resemble commands. And one survivor he steps outside, discovers that a tanker truck needs fuel. So he fills the tank, and the truck drives away peacefully. He doesn't die. Another truck rolls forward, and then another, and then another, and then the humans realize, and this is the brilliance of this story to me, that they're being forced to maintain these machines, pumping gasoline, refueling diesel engines, and keeping the vehicles operational while the trucks patiently wait in line like customers at a service station. And the machines, they don't speak outside of this Morse code language. There's no emotion because they're machines. They just simply kind of wait around, waiting until they need service. Like they're trying to keep themselves alive and what they've taken over, which is kind of why I associate to like almost like an alien taking over a machine. Like think Transformers, right? Like something kind of like that, but a little more sinister. And
yeah, it seems to me like because it's the younger young man in the story who realizes that the sound that they're hearing, that clicking sound, is Morse code, and he learned it from Boy Scouts, I think is what it said in the story. So he starts writing down what they're signaling, and it's like, attention, one of you come out and fill the tanks, you will not be harmed. This is our command, and then they start talking about it inside the diner, and they're like, what if we just don't fill their tanks? They will run out of fuel, and that's it. But they quickly realize that that the trucks are one step ahead of them, and they've brought a bulldozer, and if they don't follow the rules, that they're just going to bulldoze the diner and kill everyone. So it's sort of like a no sum game. It's like if they don't do with the truck's bidding, then they die. And yes, the trucks would not be able to refuel themselves, but that's sort of the way, because it's like, and Stephen King thought it out. He was like, well, people would have to do it if they wanted to stay alive, but obviously it's the trucks don't get fuel, they can't fuel themselves. So Yeah.
And it's a catch-22 because we don't know in this story, we don't know what other types of machinery has been taken over, right? We only know it from the section of this diner leading into this of what we're talking about now. So it is like that thing. It's like, well, there's other gas stations, right? So the trucks know. It's like, well, we kind of got them stuck here. They're in a hostage situation, situation here.
Obviously, the story was written back probably in the 70s, or maybe even earlier. I don't know exactly when he wrote it. I know it came with Night Shift, so that was, released in the 70s. Maybe he wrote it in the 60s. But anyhow, that story, you think like it's, obviously cars don't come to life. But then again, now we have self-driving vehicles in the world, and it's in its own way in the past, sort of like a vision of the future where vehicles are doing their own thing without people,
Yeah, and I mean the survivors, they're put in this situation where they're slowly starting to understand that this is probably not an isolated event and that this is already probably happening across the entire world. So
exactly. Yeah, they sort of
escape in
imagine
itself is kind of futile to some extent.
And even that where it they imagine, okay, well, if we could escape and we make our way through the little bank and then we get out into the marshes, vehicles wouldn't be able to chase us into the marshes. But then again, eventually vehicles are going to continue their conquest, which is to use construction vehicles to fill in marshes with sand and pave them over so there will be nowhere for people to go.
Right. It is very interesting. Like I said, as I've read through this, it came off to me as like more of a War of the World situation without the shuttles, but like taking over machinery,
Sure.
like a sentient being or sentient race. Which I think is actually kind of more terrifying to some extent than just but I mean, that's what's great about it. It's left up to your imagination in a lot of these stories, with the exception of the Mangler, where it's like, no, it's demon, brother.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that takes us to the humans. They eventually they sit around long enough that it's going to kind of drive them crazy. So they steal a truck that seems to obey human control still. So it's a friendly truck. It's the Optimus Prime, I guess, of this situation.
Right.
And they flee down the highway while other vehicles on the road try to block them in. And the story kind of ends. Spoiler alert for anyone listening to this who may want to check out the story. We're getting to the end here. The story ends on an unsettling note. The survivors may have escaped the diner, but the roads ahead are filled with trucks, and no one knows if anywhere on Earth is still safe. Like many stories in Night Shift, the ending leaves the situation unresolved. Humanity may already be obsolete, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, that's really kind of, circling back to how this applies to modern day, obviously with the rise of AI or self-driving vehicles, this idea that are we making ourselves obsolete, and I don't know, it's an interesting, not necessarily that that's what King was getting at here. I think he was just having some fun with what if machines came to life and demanded that we serve them instead of the other way around. But yeah, it's even more unsettling, in this day and age. So
yeah, and this short story in particular has inspired two major adaptations. Well, majors, majors maybe not the right word here, but the most famous of these being the Stephen King directed Maximum Overdrive, which is the released in 1986. And a movie I love. It was in my top 10 for Stephen King movies. I don't remember exactly where it placed, but it was up there for a lot of the same reasons as a film like Alligator might make a list for me.
Right. Well, it's famously the only movie that Stephen King actually directed himself. So he obviously has penned a lot of screenplays of his, novel to the screen, but he only ever attempted directing a film once, and then I don't think it had the greatest reception at its time, and I think he just realized, maybe this making the movies is harder than I thought, and maybe I should just stick to what I'm good at, which is writing the story.
Yeah, one thing that movie does that's kind of different than the short story, obviously, is that there's more than just trucks and vehicles. There's like RC cars and blenders and toasters and all sorts of pretty much anything mechanical.
It's a little more fleshed out. It had to be, an hour and a half or 2 hour movie. So,
but we get a similar kind of story as far as the diner goes and the Great Escape attempt, which is actually To the Marshes, if I'm remembering correctly, from Maximum Overdrive, which I did not rewatch before. I rewatched parts. I didn't rewatch the entire thing, but from what I remember, Emilio Estevez kind of leads them out. If I remember, it's like an escape, kind of like an escape trench or something. So what I'm trying to remember from the ending of Maximum Overdrive.
It's like a drainage ditch, I think, or that's how it's described in the written story. I don't know with Maximum Overdrive, the film, what they're getting out in,
but we're not here to talk about Maximum Overdrive, Chris. We're here to talk about trucks. And I don't think that you got a chance to watch the Trucks.
I haven't. So yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since I saw Maximum Overdrive, and so I can't recall all the details of the movie. And I didn't get a chance to watch the movie Trucks either. So this is really just your input here.
This is going to be me talking about the 1997 made-for-TV film Trucks, which is a version that attempted to stay much closer to the original story's premise and tone. It was directed by Chris Thompson. The film follows Ray Porter, played by Timothy Busfield, who becomes the reluctant leader of a group trapped at a desert truck stop when vehicles suddenly begin coming to life. Like the short story, the characters discover the trucks aren't trying to destroy them. They're trying to control them. Same premise. The vehicles surround the truck stop, begin forcing humans to fuel and maintain them, mirroring the central idea from the short story that we just discussed. Even though the film Trucks follows the short story more closely than Maximum Overdrive, there are some differences. So I wanted to talk about that before anyone goes, well, man, maybe I should just watch Trucks instead of read the short story instead.
The short story is only like
use of your time.
I mean, you can find it on YouTube, and it's like less than 40 minutes of your time. So if the idea of the story is entertaining to you, it's really it's a very short story.
So Trucks does the opposite of Maximum Overdrive. Instead of expanding on the plot or theme or the evil entities, it's like, let's get more characters and give them backstories to make this a full-length narrative. It does introduce some more direct action scenes, such as trucks crashing through structures, pursuit of characters, trying to give you some more like traditional horror movie moments. But the problem is it's made for TV. So like how much of that can you really do? And can you do it in a way that is going to be fun to watch? The answer to that is no. In the original story that we just went through, the thing that kind of makes the trucks unsettling and what makes them seem like I said, like they're almost like an alien race has taken over vehicles, is how eerily calm they are and how they're willing to wait out humanity. So much of that terror is kind of coming from the realization that humans are powerless to these machines.
Well, that's sort of the thing that I think any human understands, is that if a machine does have sentience, what is it going to lack? It's going to lack emotion, so it's not going to be bothered by things like fear or joy or anything. So it's just has a drive to survive, and that's it.
And in the movie, it leans more towards like suspense and survival drama. So you kind of lose some of that coldness, the mechanicalness of the short story. It premiered on October 29th, 1997 on the USA Network, which at the time was hosting such great shows as Renegade. It ran approximately 95 minutes and was produced during a period when cable networks frequently adapted horror stories into made-for-TV movies. It was actually filmed in Manitoba, Canada, in locations around Winnipeg, Gunton, and Oakbank, which I always find is interesting when they decide to do like desert highway things. I think RoboCop 2 is also filmed in Winnipeg, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
This became really popular in the 90s because they were able to do like doubling for American settings, but keep production costs super low, which this movie is very much one of those.
Well, still, I mean, Canada is still very popular. Vancouver's huge for television and film. They film all sorts of things. Strangely enough, and I think I've told you this story before, and this has nothing to do with the story we're talking about, but I actually stumbled upon a film getting made in Vancouver, British Columbia, about 20 years ago, when I was just with some friends, and we were in Vancouver looking to get a bite to eat, and ended up on the set of Fantastic Four: The Rise of the Silver Surfer, and I watched Chris Evans prior to his turn as Captain America and Jessica Alba while they were filming a scene on the movie, so that was pretty cool. Anyhow, I digress.
Yeah, so it's one additional thing that they did in this movie is they did try to keep the trucks more grounded and more realistic, whereas Maximum Overdrive, we got some stylized trucks, like famously one with the Green Goblin on the front of it, which is awesome. I don't know why you wouldn't want that in every movie.
Right?
But Trucks goes out of the way to not do that.
Isn't that the cover of Maximum Overdrive, is the Green Goblin truck?
I think depending on what VHS art or poster you're looking at, it is famous. It's one of the most famous things from that movie is that they have a truck with Green Goblin, like a giant fiberglass Green Goblin on the front of it. Right. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's just your standard like Peterbilt or Mack truck, but it just has like a giant Green Goblin on the front of it, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean there are truck drivers that customize their rig just to make it stand out. So, I mean, it's possible that, somebody somewhere has done something like that to their vehicle just because they thought it was cool. So interesting. It's not just like the vehicle magically became the Green Goblin. This is likely something, that happens in the real world where people customize the vehicle to look cool while they're driving down the road.
Yeah, for sure. Short notes about the cast. No one here of huge note. Chris Thompson is a director. He pretty much did television, so it's kind of can explain why it feels like you're just watching a TV show versus a movie. Timothy Busfield played Ray Porter, who's the main character. He won a bunch of primetime Emmys. He was in a drama called 30 Something and later appeared in The West Wing as a journalist. Danny Concannon as a show I've never watched. Can't speak on that. Brenda Bach, who played Hope, which is the counterpart in the story, his love interest, was in Hot Shots Part 2 and Last Action Hero. So out of everyone in this film, by far,
Brenda,
I would say the biggest name here. Stephen King's involvement in this, none. The short story was his involvement, and they rewrote it. There was a screenplay and adaptation written by Brian Taggart, who I have no information on.
Yeah, I mean this has happened. I think we talked about it at some point. We were talking about Lawnmower Man and how that it's like Stephen King's so popular in culture that people are just looking for their to make their movie more popular, and sometimes they'll just take the name of a story, make their own movie, and then just say based on a story by Stephen King, even if it's not the same story at all.
I will say Trucks is more so, like I said, it is more similar to the plot of the short story, but at some point you're doing yourself a disservice by watching it instead of just like, I don't know, going to YouTube and finding the short story and listening to it, or just watching Maximum Overdrive. It is a cocaine-fueled, directed by Stephen King version of Trucks. So you could just do that instead. And that is probably going to get its own episode at some point, because I have a lot to say about Maximum Overdrive after a fresh rewatch of Maximum Overdrive. I think I made the wrong choice in watching Trucks instead, but coming off of The Mangler, I had high expectations for a film that I hadn't seen.
Right. Well, they can't all be winners, right? So.
They can't all be Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger getting folded in a laundry machine, I guess. Was hoping for a bit more. I should have known better when I should have looked up what channel it was made for and saw USA and realized that this is renegade territory. Lorenzo Lamas and Lafim Nikita and was it Silk Stockings and the Attitude Era of WWF.
Right.
Did not. So
there's
anyways.
a lot of garbage that came out of the 90s. There's a lot of good stuff too, but certainly that's just the nature of that era. So
if you're looking for something crappy to watch, Trucks is out there. It is one of the movies of all time.
It's one of the movies, yeah, for sure. It's a movie, and you could probably find it, but we're just saying maybe don't.
Or maybe do. I don't know. Hey, everyone's different, man. Everyone's playlists look alike. I watch a lot of very bad TV
and that's true too. It's like somebody's garbage is another man's, treasure. So who knows? It's like you're saying, maybe this movie is for someone, just not
at
everyone.
At the very least, it'll give you a barroom conversation if someone brings up Maximum Overdrive. You can always say, "Have you ever seen Trucks?"
Right. Which, yeah. I mean, what I'm realizing as we do this podcast more and more is that I've read all of his stories, but by no means there's so many adaptations to film and television that I hadn't even heard of. Or that have a different name. In this case, it's the same name. But I had no idea that there was a USA made for TV movie, based on this short story. So
which is just wild, because you think the USA Network could have just licensed Maximum Overdrive,
Right. Yeah. I mean, did this
showed
need
that
to
instead?
Yeah.
I think it's awesome that they tried to do it, though. To some extent, like someone in a boardroom was just like, I don't know what we got. He's like, I know we got the script about trucks. You guys want to do that?
Well, and then also like that brings to mind, like, because King, and I know that his Dollar Babies was really just for film students, had nothing to do with major studios, television or film, producing his stuff into the screen. So, but it made me think about that. I'm like, how much did it cost to get the rights to make this thing? I wonder.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially because someone wrote a screenplay adaptation of it that was then sold to a studio. So, what does King's residuals look like on Trucks? I'm assuming like maybe 10 cents a year.
Yeah, I mean,
1997 film truck.
He's probably doesn't care too much. He's got plenty of bangers out there that are still raking in the dough. Green Mile and Shawshank and. The list goes on. The Shining and The Mist. I mean, there's so many good ones. Misery. That when you have a movie like Trucks that's kind of putting some shade on your name, but you got a million good ones, then no big deal.
I mean, with a movie like Trucks, you don't point that back at King, though. There's no way the source material was this bad.
No, and that's the thing this is a short story. It's very entertaining. It's just very small, so it's like there's not a lot of character development, but you get a sense, like he's such a good writer that even with, a short story like this one, you have a sense of the diner and who's in there and the different personalities that are interacting there. So there's enough there to enjoy, even in like a 40-minute read,
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. And like I said, some of my favorite parts about this is like, well, what took over the trucks? Like in my own mind, right? Like is this an alien race? Like, are we gonna get into that? And we don't, which is great
Right.
for the short stories. It always makes it more fun for me. I get to think about it afterwards. Like, are these Decepticons? I need to
Right.
know.
That's something I know that Cassie and I have talked about, and she's always like, she's not the biggest fan of sci-fi, and so like I love sci-fi, but like if it has to do with aliens, she's like, I'm not interested. I think she just kind of feels let down by those stories because they're sort of like cop outs in her mind. So I don't know, but yeah, I certainly see the idea of. I didn't take it that way when I read it because it leaves it up to you as the reader to imagine, like, how did this happen? Well, it just happened, or maybe there's some intelligent aliens out in space that have taken control of the machines just to mess with us.
To herd humanity, to break their will, to train them before having to actually reveal themselves, to make them cattle, livestock, slaves. My version's actually darker than a short story, but that takes us to the end. What is your Bachman score of Trucks?
As a short story, it's a quick, fun read. I think it's not King's strongest work. It's early King, so I'm gonna give it a 6.75.
I watched the movie, so I'm going to give it a 6. I think The Mangler is a better, similar story, but this is fun. And also Maximum Overdrive. If I was comparing it with Maximum Overdrive, that would boost the score a little bit, but that's just because I love Maximum Overdrive.
Fair.
All right. Do you want to give your socials out to everybody before we head on out?
Yeah. You can find me on Facebook, Christopher Clawson. And if you're looking for me on Instagram, it's Chris_Clawson 1982.
And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Christopher.R.Patton. Also, check out www.boinkstudios.com. Tom Clark's 6M podcast, where he reviews music, movies, and Marvel, and pretty much anything else under those. We recently did a man on the Run, which I talked about, as well as RoboCop 3. So I'm on both of those. Ray's Sports and Slams. If you're into NBA, MLB, NFL, anything sports related, he's got you covered there. That goes live every Monday at 6. And Bear Mode podcast and the Ted Lasso podcast. Both of those podcasts go over those two shows. So if you're fans of those shows, check those out. And the kind of anchor that started it all, Tom Clark's Main Event, that's Friday at 4 live on Facebook, and it will post all of those shows post on YouTube, Spotify, etc. But that'll take us out for the day. And that's the thing about these stories buried in Bachman's basement. Sometimes these very terrible movies, they take something ordinary, industrial machines, laundry presses, or in this case, the trucks we see every day on the highway, and twist them just slightly, just enough to make you wonder. Because the scariest part of trucks isn't the violence. It's the quiet suggestion that one day the machines might simply decide they don't need us anymore. And if that happens, humanity might find itself stuck on the side of the highway, pumping gas for someone else's future.